What about audio? This is on? Good. All right, awesome. So welcome everyone. Everyone, we're going to be touching on red teaming and offensive security. More specifically about breaking into buildings ethically. So yes, emphasis on the ethically. So my name is David Probinsky. I go by the handle of 0x Overflow. On my free time, I'm a hacker, red teamer, also a gamer. Um, I'm passionate about everything infosec. Um, Mostly red teaming. Um, I create content on YouTube as well as talk a lot about EDC stuff. Lately, RFID. I'm member of Hack Miami, member of Tool, presented at multiple conferences, and you can find me on LinkedIn or on GitHub as well. So, red teaming. Um, in red teaming, I do believe there is a big misconception on how it's portrayed online. Like when you think of red teaming, you think of anybody who is in offensive security. Mostly pen testers refer themselves as red teamers. Yes, they are red teamers in the sense that they are in the offensive security world and performing offensive security tasks, but they're not exactly red team operators, which is what I do. So in red teaming, more specifically, a red team is a group of individuals where, for example, if you have a target and that target gives you a scope that you can pretty much attack any of their assets that they have. And let's say they have an air gap network. Most pen testers out there, as soon as you cut that Ethernet cable, they can't do anything. Like they have nothing to attack because they don't know how to approach that. In a group of red teamers, you actually go above and beyond, not only from what you can do through behind the computer, through an Ethernet cable. Like if you have to go on-prem to the facilities, if you have to attack their Wi-Fi, if you have to in-person social engineer, not just send them a phishing email. So a red team is a group of individuals that together we attack pretty much everything that we can see on a target. So online in red teaming, most of you have probably seen this chart, um, which touches a lot on the offensive security side. There's a gazillion certifications. Some of them are more specific than others. Some actually are focused on Active Directory. Some are focused on mobile hacking, um, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of certifications out there. But if you do some research on these certifications, by far, none of them touch at all physical security. None of them touch also social engineering in person. Yes, they will cover some shallow topics in social engineering, such as phishing and vishing, but there's a lot more to social engineering than just an email. And that's the part of the red teaming that is not discussed enough, in my opinion. So, what makes a red team a red team? So, a pen tester that is also considered a red teamer is usually one that can do anything from behind a computer. They attack anything remotely. They don't have to be on prem. They don't have to dress up. Um, they can also perform phishing and vishing as well, which can be done remotely. But immediately you include the physical elements and the social engineering element. That's when a red team becomes a full red team because it's there's a lot that happens before the compromise into the network. Like, think of it, I like to use it, which is kind of funny. So you have AC, BC, after Christ, before Christ. I don't know if you're religious or not, but I see it as after compromise and before compromise. Um, Most of the stuff in pen testers that we see nowadays, um, we actually see them in the BC and I'm sorry, in the AC, which is after compromise, which is when they have already a foothold inside the network. They compromise Active Directory, they do lateral movement, they do pivoting, they do um, all sorts of exploitation. But that's usually when they have a foothold inside of the network already. But getting a foothold in the before the compromise, that's where I see the focus of red teaming. There's a lot that can be done before getting that actual foothold inside of the network. So how is this achieved? Before how we achieve, this is kind of like the scope. Here we have somewhat of a definition between the scope of pen testing and red teaming. In pen testing, you have the external network, you have the internal network, you have web apps, mobile applications, and a few more. But these are usually not touched in pen test engagement. Now, when you consider red teaming, that's where a lot more elements come into play. Like, for example, social engineering, which is a big one. Because let's say, um, yeah, you can send a phishing email to a mass amount of employees. But when you take it a step further and you go deep into social engineering, like for example, if you're social engineering your target, right, and you find out who are the C-level executives of that company, now you have a handful of targets, right, and not necessarily a broad email to the whole company. You have a specific set of individuals, and it turns out that you know the location already. Let's say from that handful of individuals that you know are in the C-level, right? You find out through social media that one of them is a big sports fan. Then you find out to what local games he goes to see the games, right? So you're taking a step further, not just sending a generic email, mass email. So by finding out what is his favorite team, maybe you can spearfish him, send him a crafted email specifically for him, saying, "Hey, you won this sweepstakes, whatever that your wife put your data into, and here are some free tickets for the upcoming game. Just click on the link to redeem them." So it's a lot more specific. But then you can even take it a step further. Like for example, in supply chain attacks, which I've done before. I had an engagement one time that we were trying to infiltrate a facility, and their security was pretty good. And I found out who their MSP was, which is their service provider who used to go on site and repair the computers and whatnot. So after I gathered their information, I dressed up as a company employee of the MSP and went on site to try to get a foothold. So doing social engineering, it's much more than just sending a phishing email. So a big difference in rules of engagement, and for red teamers, usually in red teaming, it's a free for all. You try to attack as much as possible because you're trying to emulate a real threat. It's not very specific. In pen tests, usually you have a very specific set of scopes. Like they can tell you, hey, we only want you to attack this. Only want you to test this. In red teaming, it's free for all. You attack whatever you can, whatever you see, the lowest vector for you to get in. So in social engineering, a couple of tips that I like to give for you guys that are trying to get into the field. One of them is uniforms. It adds up. Like if you see my closet, it's half of my clothes that I like and half clothes of uniforms that I actually have to use for engagements. They rack up over time, and it's hard for you to print a specific uniform of a company that you're going to use, and it becomes quite expensive. A cheap route would be to actually go to Goodwill, and you can usually find all sorts of t-shirts and polos for different companies out there. And first of all, they're going to be cheap because it's Goodwill. Second, you're actually doing something good. You're providing funds to Goodwill. And then on top of that, most of the time, those polos and t-shirts that you're going to find there already have some sort of wear and tear that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb on a new polo that you just printed 2 days ago. So it's a lot easier to get in using a uniform. Another thing to consider is badges. Ideally, you want to have a badge printer to print your own badges when you're doing your reconnaissance outside of a building. Like, for example, if you've done your proper recon, which takes a couple of weeks, you notice that employees using a specific type of badge, you recognize the badge from far away, use your long range camera, took a couple of pictures. So now you have an idea of what the badge looks like. So then you go home with your information, you print out your fake badges to try to create that persona that you're going to be impersonating. Another thing that you want to do is having multiple burner LinkedIn accounts, which helps really good when social engineering. Another scenario is that, for example, you have your target and it's a mass company and they're currently hiring certain individuals for certain areas. You take your already old burner LinkedIn account and you modify that whatever their requirements are for that position that they're hiring, you put it in your LinkedIn profile, right? And then you apply to that role. They check your LinkedIn profile, they check your resume, it all matches, they call you up for an interview. That day that you're in the interview, in some moment that very likely they're going to leave you alone for a couple of minutes while you're filling out a form or you ask for a glass of water, that's when you take your USB. Your malicious USB, you plug it in, which will ping back to your command and control, which someone like Pro will have ready to get that ping back. Then from there, you already have a foothold. And getting into an interview into a building, even though they haven't met you before, very likely they will say yes to an interview just to talk to you. And that's a great scenario for you to actually take in one of your rogue devices. Another device that I like to carry on engagements is, for example, this device, which I just recently built. I had one a couple of years ago, but this is another one. I call it a pawn pad, which I can actually clone RFID badges for up to 20 inches away. So this you put in a messenger bag. I'm walking close proximity to employees, and I'm already cloning RFID badges. This can be done in social engineering as well. Yes. So the reader itself is designed for either 12 volt or 24 volts. In the power bank, it can output up to 24. But I'm currently running it at 12 volts. And in this build, inside of the Palm Pad, I'm running an ESP key. So I can connect to it through Wi-Fi, and immediately I get a read. I check my phone, and I can see the badge and replicate it right away. Yes. And currently the battery is at 85%. I've been running it for a couple of hours already. And yeah, this can go easily all day. And because of the protection, like I don't have to worry much about it. Like I put it inside of a messenger bag and go wherever, and just I don't even have to bump into people. Like I just get in close proximity, and I can get off read off their badge. Then once I get all the credentials, I can go back home, unload them, offload them, and start creating my badges. Um, so another thing to consider when doing social engineering is props. Props always help you get into places. It's amazing. One of the good scenario, like a couple of months ago, I had a presentation at B-Sides Puerto Rico, and the theme of that B-Sides was in the medical facility, medical industry. So I'm like, you know what? My talk is on social engineering, and let me see how it works there. And I got my doctor's robe, I had my stethoscope, and when I got to the conference, I actually walked in. Nobody asked any questions or anything until I actually found one of the organizers who recognized me and said, "Did you just walk in without a badge?" I'm like, "Yeah." So it works. Um, when you're trying to infiltrate into places, you want to consider the props that you're using. They always work and they always will help you. One of them that Deviant himself he uses is as a fire inspector, or anything related to fire code, regulation, compliance, and inspection. Um, Small fake badge, a helmet, your clipboard, and then you show up in a vehicle with like fire or something on a magnet printed that you got a Vista print for a couple of dollars, and one of those little yellow strobe lights and a orange cone in front of the car. Nobody's gonna question you. Like just act the role and part of it. Another thing that can help with social engineering is, let's say if you plan to go on, let's say on a Thursday or a Friday, give them a heads up, the target, like a couple days before. Like for example, call the receptionist on a Monday and let her know, hey, I have one of my inspectors. It's not an auditor. We're not going to find you or anything. We're just doing a survey in the area. He needs to swing by to ask you a couple of questions and walk around the building and check out the sprinklers or whatever. Is it okay if he passes by? And yeah, yeah, sure, he can pass by and whatever. And they already are expecting you. So once you show up, they'll likely have a badge ready. Oh yeah, here you go. Walk in and do your thing. So you building that report helps when social engineering. So it does happen that sometimes you encounter clients that they will invest a lot of money into their cybersecurity solutions. I've seen clients investing close to six figures in solutions, but then on their physical security, they don't really consider it at all. And then they have all these sort of protections, but then the rec sensor on the access control on the door exit is not installed properly. Then you can just bypass it with a can of compressed air, squeeze it through the door, it unlocks, and you're in. And then you can just walk up to the server and grab it, take it with you. So what about all the money that they invested into the cyber solutions? So a lot of clients do not consider their physical security. So here's the sample methodology and where red teaming comes in. Like for example, you have the reconnaissance, enumeration, exploitation, prevest, lateral movement, and then you have the reporting. But when it comes to red teaming and pen testing, for example, if you take this area right here and it's an air gap network and you disconnect it. Let's say you disconnect the Ethernet. That's where red teaming comes in. Because like if I unplug the Ethernet, yeah, you're going to be completely disconnected from the world. Yeah, it's going to be secure, but that doesn't stop a red teamer. There's a lot more that we can do. We can go on-prem. We can do social engineering. We can do wireless hacking. I had another engagement that I actually had a client that they were in a building. They were like on the 20th floor or something, and they had physical security on guard on the first floor. And they challenged me like, "You're not going to be able to get in," because they were thinking that I was going to try to get in as a social engineer and try to find my way up to the 20th floor. Well, it turns out that the building where they were across the lake, and me being creative, I took my custom built cantina. I sat in a little park across the lake with a coffee in hand, pointed a cantina to the building, and within half a mile away, I popped their Wi-Fi. So being a red teamer is thinking outside the box. Not necessarily you have to go on site and do social engineering, but it's figuring out a way of you getting in the easiest way possible. So a lot of the stuff that red teamers consider is that in uh, pen testing and red teaming, you have clients all over the world, but the ones that the ideal targets that you would consider in terms of red teaming are the ones that are usually in the medical field, SCADA, industrial control, IoT. Like red teaming is everywhere. Wherever they have equipment, wherever they're in manufacturing, that they have physical paperwork, that they do stuff physical, which is everywhere, you got to consider red teaming, not just your cyber solutions. And then another difference between pen testing and red teaming, of course, is when you're red teaming, there will be travel involved. You gotta dress up accordingly to the environment that you're gonna blend into. Like for example, if you're going into a building that they have a lot of executives and a lot of people dressed up, obviously you're not gonna go dressed down. You gotta dress up according to the environment that you're gonna break into. And likewise, it goes the other way around. If the area or facility that you're going to break into is very on the countryside, then obviously you got to dress down. Um, yeah, it does look cool if you're going to dress up like very military and tactical and cargo pants and all black and whatnot, or carry a backpack such as this one with all the patches and flags. But no, at all, you actually want to avoid that. You do not want to stick out at all. So usually when I'm in engagement, I dress up according to the environment that I'm gonna blend into. And for example, with this device, I put it inside of a messenger bag that is as less an attention seeker as possible. So in terms of the skill set and tools that you will need in order to learn, of course, we have the cyber side, which is your networking, your Linux, your pivoting, your compromise, web applications, database. It's a lot to learn in the cyber. And the physical side, you got to learn about lock picking, you got to learn about lock bypassing, pin tumblers, the different wafer locks, different kinds of locks that we have out there. If you pass by the lockpick village, I've never picked a lock before, please, I invite you to do so. I'll teach you how to pick a lock open. And then you have to learn even more advanced stuff, such as elevator keys, alarms and cameras, RFID and access control, like the setup we have there, that you can clone RFID badges. You'll learn about locks that are key to like there's a lot of keys a lot of locks out there in the industry that use the same key that you can open, and of course your implant devices. As for social engineering, there isn't much to practice other than reading books and practicing with your friends. Eventually, I know there will be at some point workshops out there to learn social engineering, but it's mostly books. There's a couple books from Chris Hadnegi that are really good on social engineering. You should read those up and learning about dressing up and body language as well. Hadnegi? Eh, I'm not sure, but if not, I will be at B-Sides Orlando. Very likely, I'll see if I do something on social engineering. Um, you got your physical tools. I do have my website up there. If not, I do have it at the end where I have listed pretty much all the tools that I use for my physical security and social engineering engagements. But here are a sample of the tools that you will need for your engagements. A couple of implants. There's a Proxmark. A couple of images are broken. I do apologize. I will provide you with the slides afterwards. And then here's pretty much the basics on lock picking. Once again, if you pass my lock pick video, I'll teach you how to pick a lock open if you've never done it before. And consistency, just practicing. And I do apologize, but we are out of time. And do you have any questions? No, 20 inches. Inches. Yeah, no, no, that's fine. So, um, yes, and yes and no. Those are more related to the physical. Social engineering is when it's involved, when you need always the human element. If you remove the human element from that and leaving the physical, then it becomes more of a physical thing than the human element. Yeah. Social engineering is most part like there's social engineers that can walk into a building with nothing but a uniform and a clipboard and nothing electronic on them. So yeah, social engineering is mostly human element. Any other questions? That is definitely not one of one. That one I built. I have built them before. Um, and no, I do not sell them, but it's a pricey build. I mean, the reader itself, if you purchase one of those readers new, they're costing around $800. But they can be built a lot cheaper. But yeah, if you're interested in building one in the future, reach out to me and I can help you out with that. Any other questions? So I actually have a process that I do in red team engagements where I make a three-way communication and somewhat of a contract. Well, not a contract, but like a formal notice between my client and law enforcement. So I inform my client that, like, obviously the client knows that this engagement is going to happen, right? So I have the client reach out to their local enforcement agency, whoever that is, or local police, and let them know that we're going to be doing this engagement and to write down, gather information from them on who's a good contact. Then once they provide me that information, I reach out to them as well, and I make that three-way communication, let them know, hey, I'm going to be going this day, and I'm going to be breaking into this building. I don't know if you want to have a patrol outside, keeping an eye out or not, because it can happen that you might trigger an alarm, and they might be thinking that it's an actual thief going in. So you want to avoid that. Now that is for local authorities, but if it's a third-party security company that they have, then ideally you do not want to let them know because you want to test how good and how efficient they are at doing their job, how they're supposed to. So I would have two sets of get out of jail free cards. Um, a fake one that I would take it even further if I get caught, for example, by an employee of the company. Like, for example, if I get caught by an employee of the company, like a legitimate employee, I would bring out the card and say, oh, yeah, here's an authorization by the owner of the company. He's hired me to inspect something in the building, not telling him that I'm doing a red team. No, no, no. I'm here to inspect something. And either they call me on my BS or they let me be. If they let me be, then I take it further. And then I have the legit authorization form, which is I only present to law enforcement. No, you, no, usually MSP or AT&T. We can beep out the AT&T part, right? But no, ISP mostly. That's one of the easiest ones to get in. Like, it's very easy. Because here's the thing, and when you're doing social engineering, you do not want them to do something for you. You want them to want to do something for you. Let me explain. Let's say you call up a company to let them know, hey, we're going to be there in 3 weeks or in 2 weeks or a week or whatever, in X day, um, because we're doing some repairs on a few buildings close to you, and we might be shutting down your internet by accident. Is it okay if we send someone there so he can keep an eye out on your equipment just to make sure that we don't knock off your internet? And just because they don't want to go through the headache of having their internet shut down for a full day, they're more than glad to help you help them. But yeah, if you just show up randomly with no pretext, and like, yeah, I need to be there, they're like, why? Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.